essence. Clear?
Okay, thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanakari Yamuna Tira Vanakari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanakari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Jaya Gaurani Bhekturishvara Gaurani Bhekturishvara Gaurani Jaya Jagannatha Baladeva Jai Subhadra Jaya Sudarsana Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Ananda Dev Bala Narasimha Jaya Ananda Dev Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Gauranita Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Devam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotra Sadasya Srimad Bhagavatam Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Devam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotra Sadasya Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय मायापुर श्री नवद्वीप धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय द्वारका धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय गंगा माई यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय तुलसी महारानी की जय समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय Gauravakta Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Hari Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna devotees, welcome for today's morning Srimad Bhagavatam class of ISKCON Seshadripuram Srivas Angan chapter. Today I have been asked to discuss third canto status quo, chapter 21, conversation between Manu and Kardama. So the second half of this, so this has around 56 verses. So we will start from 29th verse. I'll share the screen. Okay, I will read it. Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, 31st chapter, verse number 29. Yata atma bhritam viryam navadha prasavai syati virye tvadiya rishaya adhasyanti ajasatmanaha. Translation. She will bring forth 9 daughters from the seed sown in her by you. And through the daughters you beget, the sages will duly beget children. So this verse does not have any purport by Srila Prabhupada. I will give a little background of where this chapter, where we are starting, and so that we get the context clear. So this is the conversation between Manu and Kardama, as the chapter says. In the earlier chapter, earlier sections, you would have seen Kardama Muni was actually uh, 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 praying to the Lord that he actually wants to have a nice wife so that he can actually continue his devotional service in a nice way, and from there he can actually go back to Godhead. So he is making a nice prayers to the Lord. As a result, the Lord personally appears. The Lord personally appears and gives him the benediction that he is desiring for, that he will get a very nice wife, very much suitable for his expectations. So post this, this is part of that conversation. There, the Lord is actually giving him, you know, the darshan, and then he is actually talking to him. And these sections that we are seeing, going to see today, will talk about the last section of the conversation between Lord and Kardama Muni, and subsequent to that, what happened. So, a portion of what happened we will be able to see today. So this is this section where this particular verse where we have read, where uh, where the Lord is actually giving the specific benediction here. He's saying, she will bring forth 9 daughters from the seed sown in her by you, and through the daughters you beget, the sages will duly beget children. So after he has mentioned that, you will get a suitable wife, he is also foretelling about their future life. So he is telling that, you will have uh, 9 daughters, and these daughters will actually marry great saintly persons, and then they will also have nice life, just how normally all the grahastha like, you marry and then you beget children. And of course, it's not about simply marrying and begetting children like cats and dogs, but it's about uh, themselves also progressing in their purpose of life, which is actually self-realization, realizing that we are the part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, and coming to our original constitutional position of having to serve him eternally once we are liberated from this material world. Of course, not once. We start when we are in this body. We can get liberated even in this body, and then we take up that complete service eternally. Sometimes even coming back as a human being, that's okay. But we are liberated at that stage. So that is the expectation of every human life, and particularly when devotees marry and get to the Grihastha stage. And then he is giving further instructions to him. With your heart cleansed by properly carrying out my command, resigning to me the fruits of all your acts, you will finally attain to me. So he's giving him, okay, fine, you desire to marry, you have children, that's okay. But what is the purpose of your life? So, and he's saying, you will progress in your spiritual life, you will progress in your, what do you call, in your goal of life. Uh, and he's saying how he will do that is he will carry him in his heart all the time. And he will renounce all the results of his action, because being a grahastha, is supposed to be doing some activities which may not be looking like a devotional service. Therefore, if at all he is doing anything else which is not typically looking like a devotional life, but he will be dedicating everything to the service of the Lord. Or in other words, he'll be acting as a representative of the Lord, and whatever happens is all by the for the Lord and by the Lord. That kind of a thinking. So we act like an agent that way. Uh, Resigning to me the fruits of all your desires, you will finally attain me. So, in this process of dedicating oneself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, refining our activities and purifying our consciousness and our senses and our mind and our intelligence, we will finally come to a stage of complete liberation, and possibly even when we are within this body. So, this has been nicely explained here. And here Prabhupada is writing, here the words Tirti Kritasesha Kriyartaha are significant. He says Tirtha. Tirtha means a sanctified place where charity is given. So generally, we all know whenever we perform any nice uh, yajna or any auspicious ritual also, first thing is they do the cleansing of the home. Like, they'll bring sometimes the cow urine, cow dung, mix some of the other auspicious items and sprinkle all over the place of in the house or wherever it is being done. And that sanctifies the external environment. And then there are mantras which we are chanting to sanctify the internal consciousness, like when we are doing a devotional service, when we are uh, trying to perform deity worship or whatever, we take achaman and all that. That is actually, those water actually goes inside to purify our internal side and the external, as I discussed earlier. Like this, these things are all there, but the idea of a sanctified place we see everywhere. Like, you go to these uh, the uh, the what do you call, the pilgrimages, the great places of pilgrimage, where the Lord has performed great pastimes or where great devotees have performed pastimes. So those places are considered to be sanctified because the Lord has been there or his great representative has been there. Like today we are talking about, yesterday I was watching Mayapur, where the new temple of Vedic planetarium and Nrsimhadev, the altar of Nrsimhadev is getting inaugurated between yesterday, today, tomorrow. So yesterday was the first day, I think. So there, while discussing, devotees were talking about how Jayapatak Maharaj is actually taking the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to 108 places where he went during his presence in earth 525 years back. Wherever he went, 550 years maybe, wherever he went, or 450 years, 475 years, from 500 years back when he came, then he was there for around 40, 45 years, like that. So that period, he went to many places, and wherever he went is actually a very great sanctified place. And therefore, ISKCON is actually looking to have the footprints of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu installed in all these 108 places. So the Jaya Patak Maharaj is thinking is that just like we have these 108 Divya Desams everywhere, where the Sri Vaishnava, wherever the saints, they went to the temples of the Lord and they glorified the Lord, that place has becomes a Divya Kshetra. 108, what do you call, uh, important places where the Vaishnavas should visit. So now that, like that, in our Sampradaya, wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went, those places are places sanctified, that, and then that's a great place for us to be there and get that vibration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's being there and purify ourselves. So this is one, the concept that is being talked about. So wherever such great devotees are there, it is a sanctified place. And there are many examples given. There are examples given where it is said, uh, Maharaja Yudhishthira welcomed Narada Muni. Wherever you are present, that place becomes sanctified because the Lord himself is always seated in your heart. So such is the great position of the great devotees. Wherever they are, that place becomes a tirtha. So that is being discussed here. Then the next verse. Showing compassion to all living entities, you will attain self-realization. Giving assurance of safety to all, you will perceive your own self as well as all the universes in me and myself in you. It's a very nice word, nice verse. So I'll read once again. Showing compassion to all living entities, you will attain self-realization. giving assurance of safety to all, you will perceive your own self as well as all the universes in me and myself in you. So this is a very wonderful verse. Prabhupada has actually given a very long purport for this. Let me try to explain this as much as I can. Okay. So the Prabhupada is actually here discussing about this elaborate verse. So there are many aspects which is being covered. So we will see some of these aspects. The first principle to be understood is that this world is a product of the supreme will. That means the many people there are there is these two concepts, right? This personalism and impersonalism. So the impersonalists think that this world is actually non-different from the Lord, and therefore everything is actually the Lord. But the personalists understand that this world is actually the supreme will of the Lord, while everything is an extension of the Lord. That is understood, right? Everything manifests from Him. He says, all of there are different energies where He talks about the inferior energy and superior energy, and He says both of them are actually emanating from Him. That means, yes, we all understand that everything is actually coming from the Lord, including the Prakriti, which is the inferior nature, and the Atma, which is the superior nature. But at the end of the day, they are only the energies of the Lord. They are not the Lord by themselves. So this is the first aspect which we need to be very clearly understanding. And Prabhupada is actually giving examples where he says in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada is quoting this verse, I am spread all over the universe in my impersonal form. Everything is resting on me, but I am not present. Prabhupada is writing here. That means he's saying, yes, everything is resting on me. And there's elsewhere he's saying, no, everything is strung like a manigana. That's like nicely like what do you call, like a garland. They are all strung around the neck and they are resting in me. But that doesn't mean I am that. I am not here in this verse which Prabhupada is quoted is saying, but I am not present in them. So how do you understand that? Though this is the great inconceivable position of the Lord where he is simultaneously one and different. While everything is same, in one sense that they have come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and they are in that sense non-different from the Lord. But that is one limited understanding. But beyond that, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person and everything emanates from me. Janmadasya yataha. Starting from Srimad Bhagavatam, first thing it says that everything emanates from him, but he is the original source and completely aloof from all of this. So this one is Prabhupada is very clearly explaining. He's giving this example of the sunshine. In that sunshine, all these universes are floating, but that doesn't mean that's the energy of the sun in which all these universes are floating. If sun doesn't come for 2 days, we are all doomed. Over. That's it. Our existence is gone. That means we are dependent on the sun. That, therefore, the sunshine is actually what is persisting, this sustaining us. If sunshine is not there, we are not there. Now, can you therefore take only the sunshine is sun? Yes, you can take, but that's a very limited understanding of the sun because the sun is physically present elsewhere. A very simple example that Prabhupada is making us understand. But somehow when it comes to the Lord, we think, everything is God and we start worshipping all this inferior energy of the Lord. Yes, they are worshipable, but not as the original Supreme Personality of God. That difference is there. Like we worship uh, there are very auspicious trees. We respect them, we worship them. But similarly, there are many wonderful mountains. There are like this rivers, Ganga. We worship Ganga. We offer oblations to Ganga. We worship Tulsi plant. But these are all not worshipped independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We worship them because they are all great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They have a direct connection to the Supreme Lord, and therefore we see them as extension. But without the Lord, they have no locus standi. That is important. And as long as they are connected, they get that respect. And similar for us also, as long as we are connected to the Lord, we have a position in that whole thing. And Prabhupada is explaining also, like, if there is a small nut in a machine, the nut which is disconnected from that machine has no value. But that nut which is actually connected to the machine and doing its role of holding something in that position, then it has a value to that. If that nut is not there, the machine will not work. But the nut by itself is of no use. So it's like that. But of course, if we are not there, the Lord can still function. Unlike a nut which is not there, then the machine, some parts will fall off, and therefore the machine cannot work. That's a very crude example, a material example, but the Lord Himself can create one more nut and use it. That's the whole thing. The Lord does not depend on any of these nuts. If I may so in a lighter sense. So that is important. Then he's talking about. The energy can be utilized for self-realization in once if one is compassionate. So now how is linking that beautifully? So here the word is saying, showing compassion to all living entities. Prabhupada, that the quote we are discussing, the verse we are discussing says, showing compassion to all living entities, you will attain self-realization. So the process of attaining self-realization for Kardama Muni, Krishna is saying, is that you will actually be showing compassion to all the devotees. So that is all about Krishna consciousness. That is all about what Prabhupada is trying to teach us about this particular, the parampara in which we are in, the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Our purpose is all about practicing Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees. That means we first have to make devotees, and also we should be associated with senior devotees, and at the same time be compassionate on devotees or to be devotees in the future. And it is very important that we spread this mercy to everyone, that compassion, by simply engaging in preaching the message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here Krishna is saying, Kardama Muni, you will actually attain me. That is the words that used by Krishna. And Prabhupada is giving example of how a person who simply goes to the temple, worships the Lord, he is actually a third-class devotee. So Prabhupada, this verses, everyone should actually, after this class, maybe, since I'm covering so many things, it's difficult to very elaborately deal. You should read this purport of Srila Prabhupada very nicely. He explains various aspects very deeply. So there he's saying a person who's simply interested in going to the temple and having his one-on-one relationship with the Lord is actually a third-class devotee. That means many people are wonderful pujaris and all that. But if they are restricting only to the pujari service of the deity worship, but not showing respect to the other devotees, then he becomes a little lower in the in his devotion to the Lord. That way, you are devoted to the deity, but if you are not able to respect the other devotee who's there, but you think your only job is to look at the deity, but not about the other the devotees of the Lord, then that is a third class kind of a thing. But another person who's actually able to look at other people that who are equal to them and who are able to serve them, and interact and share more from other devotees, but not much of non-devotees, but with the devotees, and he is able to be little more serving them, not simply the deity alone, but looking at the other devotees also and serving them, sharing with them, all that. They are considered in a second-class devotee. But a first-class devotee is one, he can actually award fearlessness. That means he can make everyone Krishna conscious. That Prabhupada is dealing about what is fearlessness. Fearlessness means, see, in this material world is full of anxiety and fear. Anyone, if you see everywhere, we are always anxious, thinking what is going to happen next. We may not say so. We may not actually sometimes think we are in that state. But technically, we are all having that in the back of our mind. And all our activities are about seeing what is there, what I should do now to take care of my tomorrow next meal, about my next day, about the next year, that is working in all our mind, and we are so much worried about the uh, uh, future, right? But to award fearlessness to the common man is the greatest act of charity. Therefore, Prabhupada is talking about the position of a sannyasi. The compassion is being discussed here, right? So he's talking about that. So the position of a sannyasi is that he should simply be traveling door to door, village to village, and you can extend that to nation, and then to the universe to universe. Prabhupada said, right? After this, someone asked him, "Where will you go, Prabhupada? After this, your current Leela of being on planet Earth?" He said, I will go to the Patala Loka to preach the message of Krishna consciousness. So in his case, planet to planet, right? He did all over this universe when in our lifetime, we have seen that. But he's saying now next I will go to the Patala Loka like that. So we can at least think of going door to door, if not village to village or town to town or country to country. But each one in his own capacity or in her own capacity should take up to show this compassion to the other living entities. That is mentioned, and the grahasthas will have to also have a role. Not that okay, I am a grahastha, that I am interested in only begetting children and taking care of their future. No, everyone has to actually here Kardama Muni will have what, 8 daughters, and of course he will also talk about his one son. But in spite of all that, he's saying you have to be compassionate, and then compassionate here is not. We understand what is compassionate here. Prabhupada writes. We will also see messages about spreading this message of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada is talking about how a grahastha also, even though he is working, how he should actually be, he should be sponsoring the sannyasis and the brahmanas. So that example of uh, uh, the Goswami, how he demonstrated that, Rupa Goswami, how he demonstrated that 25% of your earnings is to be used for yourself, 25% for to be kept for your future. This is the Grahastha situation because we are anxious about the future. Then the balance 50% to be used, 25% for the charity, for the relatives and all of that, and 25% for other devotional activities like this. So this is the instruction given by Sana Rupa Goswami. He demonstrated, and Prabhupada is quoting that here, how this compassion has to be executed practically on the ground. That is discussed. Uh, And he says the ultimate purpose, what is therefore what he also talks about it, right? Showing compassion to all living entities, you will attain self-realization that is understood. Giving assurance of safety to all, also we discussed. See, the assurance we said, no, that is the biggest charity. Safety is we are anxious and we are fearful of death and so many other things. But to be able to make us comfortable that, you are eternal soul, there is nothing called death, and your purpose is actually to stop this birth and death, is actually giving assurance to everyone, and that is the compassion that we are showing. And he says you will perceive your own self as well as all the universes in me and myself in you. So this is about this oneness. If you remember, we talked about this oneness in the beginning, and how people misinterpret this oneness as everything is one. Not like that. Everything is one is to be understood in the sense that everything is actually the energy of the Lord, and therefore everything has to be used in the service of the Lord. So this is our Krishna conscious activity. Therefore, Prabhupada says, it's not about worry about, money is untouchable, I will not touch it. Material things are not to be considered for devotee, not like that. They are all also energy of the Supreme Lord. And as a devotee, you will look at them all as the energy of the Lord. Energy is to be used in the service of the energetic. This is logic, right? uh, Whatever I have faculty, that is used to serve my body. This hand is to serve my body like that. And of course, when I'm able to see the world as one, I use this hand to serve the parts and parcels of the Lord. But the initial thing is this hand is serving my body like this. The all the souls are there to serve the part, and they are part and parcel of the Lord, but they have to serve the whole. Therefore, the oneness is in that sense that every energy to be used in the service of the Lord, That means the unity of thinking, unity of direction, unity of purpose. Therefore, that is considered oneness, but not that I am physically merged into the Lord. That is the difference. So that is being discussed here. Now let's go to the next verse. O great sage, I shall manifest my own plenary portions through your wife, Devahuti, along with your 9 daughters, and I shall instruct her in the system of philosophy that deals with the ultimate principle or categories. So he is also saying, other than the 8 daughters that you will actually have me as your son. So this is the greatest benediction one can actually ask for. Right? Now you can think of the position of Nanda Maharaj, uh, Yashoda Mai, and Dasharat, all of these great personalities who had the opportunity to have the Lord as their son. And this example is given uh, that how the Lord is going to come and appear as his son. That's the benediction he's given. And there, this he is going to, and Prabhupada is explaining here, the Lord will appear as his son as Kapila Deva. And this we all know in Srimad Bhagavatam. Going forward, I don't know, many weeks, you will be discussing later. Now, this Kardama Muni's life will be going on for some time. But then after that, when he's finished with this material life, when he goes to be very serious on devotional life, then his wife, Devahuti, will be thinking, what happens to me? At that time, then her son, Kapila Dev, takes up this service of actually giving her instructions, just like Krishna gave instructions to Arjuna. Kapila Dev will instruct his mother, Devahuti. So he is mentioning about that. I will instruct, he's saying that, and I shall instruct her in the system of philosophy that deals with the ultimate principles of categories. So he will give this instruction, and that instruction is actually very, very elaborate in Srimad Bhagavatam. You may go on for weeks discussing this, and this is the very, very elaborately discussed. Kapila Muni discusses in detail, right? What is the purpose of life? Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. So Kapila Muni is will explain all these things very nicely to his mother Devahuti. And here this discussion is about this Kapila Muni is how Prabhupada is explaining. There are 2 types of expansions of the Lord. So he says he divides himself into 2 different expansions, one called Kala and the other called Vibhinnamsha. So, Vibhinnamsha. So this is there, Kala and Vibhinnamsha. And the ultimate expansions of Vishnu Tattva, such as Vamana, Govinda, Narayana, Pradyumna, Vasudeva, and Ananta, are called Swamsha Kala. That means Swamsha means Swa Amsa. That means it is directly coming from the Lord, direct expansions. So these are so the Kala represents basically direct expansions of the Lord, and Vibhinnamsha is basically the expansion of the Lord. So that is the difference. So, for example, if you take, to be very simple and clear, if you take Balram, Balram is a direct expansion of the Supreme Lord, and he's called Kala. And we know after Krishna expanded as Balram, from Balram came the 4 the quadruple incarnations of Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Sankarshana, and Vasudeva. So these are expansions of the expansion. That means they are actually Vibhinnamsha. So like this, we need to understand the different incarnation. And Prabhupada is explaining all these incarnations are as powerful as the original. Right? So that example is given that from the one candle, there's a light in the candle. With that candle, you light another candle. Now the fire in that other candle is the same as the first candle. Like this, you can keep on lighting many candles and all the lights are same. So that means they are all capable of doing the same job, but at the same time, Prabhupada is explaining there is always the difference between the first and the last. Even though non-different, they are different. So we need to understand the position of Krishna versus the position of the Vibhinamsha. While they are equally capable, but then they do not exhibit all the potencies of the original Supreme Personality. That's how we understand it. Like, for example, Lord Rama is not different from Lord Krishna, but Lord Rama said, while he is the Supreme Lord, he can do whatever that Krishna can do, but he restricted himself. He said, no, I will actually behave like a human being, like a king, and I will follow the dharma of a mortal human being. Like, for example, I will marry one woman. So he could have, Krishna is capable of marrying 10 million women. But same thing, Rama, it's not like Rama is not capable, but he is the same Lord. But Lord Rama is saying, no, I want to exhibit this behavior only in this form. That's all. There's nothing more. I will not marry another lady other than Mother Sita. Mother Sita, from our perspective, for him, wife Sita. So that is the only relationship I will have. Other than that, I will not have exhibit any other bhava with any other stri. This was Krishna Rama's mood. Same original personality of Godhead, but he is limiting himself. So that is how we understand the Vibhinamsha. They are capable, but they will not be exhibiting similar. The entire potency what the Lord is exhibiting. So this versus that, to understand that aspect. Now let's go to the next one. Next one, it says, Maitreya went on. Thus, having spoken to Kardama Muni, the Lord who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness departed from that lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Saraswati. So here, the place where the Lord gave darshan to Kardama Muni is being described here, Bindu Sarovar. So let's discuss this a little bit. Because now few verses here will talk about the greatness of this place, the how is the environment around that lake called Bindu Sarovar. So it's mentioned. So the point that is made is the Lord who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna conscious. That word is being that is the verse that we read. Thus, having spoken to Kardama Muni, the Lord who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness. So that means here he's talking about the position of the Lord, how he can be seen or how he cannot be seen. He says, we have material senses, but how can we see the Supreme Lord? He is called Adokshaja. And Prabhupada is writing, Adokshaja means you cannot be seen, that person cannot be seen with material senses. Akshaja means knowledge perceived by material senses. That cannot happen. And the Lord is actually Adokshata. That means he cannot be perceived by material senses. And he is also called as Ajita. That means one who cannot be conquered. Then when a person cannot be conquered and he cannot be seen with the material eyes, how can he see? And Prabhupada, here Krishna is saying, but he revealed himself only because his senses are in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada is saying the great saintly persons who are fully purified of material contamination, who are in spirit situated, even though they are in physical body in this material planet, but they are actually completely cleansed of their misgivings, of their misunderstanding that I am material nature. And they are in that pure consciousness, and in that consciousness, they can have darshan on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that we have seen many times. Prabhupada exhibiting such such leela that the people are there, devotees are sitting there, and they are suddenly seeing Prabhupada in a different world. And Prabhupada is having different interactions. And sometimes he had actually said Krishna was here. Krishna came and garlanded me, Prabhupada says, and he's dancing in ecstasy. Prabhupada can see that Krishna was physically present there in that place. And Prabhupada went to touch his leg, and Krishna immediately ran away from there. So Prabhupada became so ecstatic, he started dancing up and down. This is one instance. But there are many instances like this. There are times when Prabhupada was sitting in a room, nobody was there, and devotees could hear, like they could see inside, peep inside like that, and they see Prabhupada is having some discussions, and nobody is there in the room. Like, he's animatedly speaking with his hands and moving his hands up and down, and he's speaking, but nobody is there in front of him that these people can see. So there are many such things that great devotees can actually, who are not in the material platform, can actually see the Lord and talk to him. The purification of the material senses and perception of the transcendental form, namely the quality of Krishna, are combined together in one word, Pratyak Akshaja, which is used here. So that he's explaining in this verse about the how we cannot see with our material eyes, but we can actually see the Lord actually as he is with our purified senses. So the next verse. While the sage stood looking on, the Lord left by the pathway leading to Vaikuntha, a path extolled by all great liberated soul. The sage stood listening as the hymns forming the basis of the Samaveda were vibrated by the flapping wings of the Lord's carrier, Garuda. So the Lord, after that, physically left in that from that place, from that Sarovar, Bindu Sarovar, the Garuda carrier, he was sat on the Garuda, and Garuda went in a specific way to the Vaikuntha. So Kardama Muni was seeing this place, and Prabhupada is talking about this Vedic mantras being chanted by the vibration, by the flapping of the wings of Garuda. So he says Garuda is all the time singing the glories of the Lord, and the great devotees are all very eagerly hearing this, the great personality called Garuda. And when he is singing the Samaveda, everybody simply have to listen, right? And it's not about we talking, it is about we listening to great personalities. So, and the question about, seeing the path in which, so the other one is more symbolic to say the seeing the path in which the Lord went to Vaikuntha. So, it's not like, the Lord can, it's like not like a road. Okay, in this road, if you take, you will go to this place, like from here, my house to Seshadripuram, I need to take a road, specific road. Otherwise, I cannot reach the temple. But that is not the one which is being talked here. It is about following in the footsteps of the Lord and his Acharya and his devotees. That, these people who are actually looking at this, how to follow the Lord, how to look at the way in which he went, how the devotees of the Lord went. And if we are taking up that kind of a mood and following in their footsteps, we can also reach Vaikuntha. But on our own, if we are going to try and do something which is not practically possible. See, he's writing, right? In Bhagavad Gita is clearly stated, Yatatam api siddhanam. So, there are many persons who are trying to attain perfection by striving for liberation from material bondage. And those who are actually liberated are called Brahma Bhuta or Siddha. Only the Siddhas or persons liberated from material bondage can become devotees. So that question of purification of the senses and following the pure devotees of the Lord, these two things will help us go back to Vaikuntha Loka. That is there. Next verse, 35th verse. Then, after the departure of the Lord, the worshipful sage Kardama stayed on the banks of Bindu Sarovara, awaiting the time of which the Lord has spoken. So, after the Lord went, he continued his devotional service in that place. When the next event is supposed to happen, when he is supposed to meet his, his wife. So, next verse. Swayambhuva Manu with his wife mounted his chariot, which was decorated with golden ornaments. Placing his daughter on it with them, he began traveling all over the earth. So here Swayambhuva Manu personally came, keeping along with his daughter and his wife. He's the Swayambhuva Manu is not simply a king of a local MLA or a MP or a prime minister of one country. No, he was for the entire universe the king. we all know the Manus, 14 different Manus, which are there in the day of Brahma, and they are managing the entire universal affairs on behalf of Lord Brahma. So such a person personally coming, looking for a son-in-law, looking for a husband for his daughter, shows his love for his daughter. That is being discussed there later. That is the duty of a father, that he should personally engage in looking for a nice son-in-law who can actually take the daughter further towards spiritual realization. O Vidura, they reached the hermitage of the sage who had just completed his vows of austerity on the very day foretold by the Lord. The next one. This Prabhupada has not written any commentary. The holy lake Bindu Sarovara, flooded by the waters of the river Saraswati, was restored to by hosts of eminent was resorted to by hosts of eminent sages. Its holy water was not only auspicious but as sweet as nectar. It was called Bindu Sarovara because drops of tears had fallen there from the eyes of the Lord, who was overwhelmed by extreme compassion for the sage who had sought his protection. This is very nice. This lake Bindu Sarovar is actually a drop of tears which flowed from the Lord's eye. As a result, that lake became manifested. And that lake, we all know how Ganges is so sacred because it came from the lotus feet of the Lord. And it is completely connected to the Lord, and therefore it has got all the greatness. Similarly, this Bindu Sarovar is one of the great uh, water bodies or the lake here, which came because it was the the tears of the Lord. And the Lord was so compassionate when he saw Kardama Muni so much in devotion and having a desire to get a nice wife. The Lord actually had a drop of tear in his eyes. He cried for him, and therefore that water became there. And that water, it is mentioned, anyone who takes a, uh, whatever, take the association of that lake, they are cured of all the diseases. And this is said even of Ganga. Like, if even physically, materially, we have some ailments in our body, if we take bath in Ganga, then that ailment will get cured. And even today, Prabhupada says these beliefs are there and people are actually having these benefits. So these are all very, very powerful personalities. So the next verse. Here now this discussion is about the greatness of this lake and how the environment was around this. The shore of the lake was surrounded by clusters of pious trees and creepers, rich in fruits and flowers of all seasons that afforded shelter to pious animals and birds, which uttered various cries. It was adorned by the beauty of groves of forest trees. So there, what is the environment around the lake? It was lined by beautiful trees. Pious trees means pious trees. Prabhupada explains are those which are giving nice fruits and flowers. There are many trees which are actually not bearing any fruits or flowers. They are called impious trees. That's the Prabhupada explains there. Therefore, those trees which give nice fruits and flowers, they are considered to be a nice pious trees. And he says every tree brought fruits and flowers, and every bird sang the glories of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that one definition we learned, that trees, pious trees, which are these pious trees and which are not pious trees. We can see many trees which have no any proper anything which can be used. In terms of the fruits and flowers like that, they are not very pious trees. The area resounded with the notes of overjoyed birds. Intoxicated bees wandered there. Intoxicated peacocks proudly danced, and merry cuckoos called one another. The beauty of the pleasant sounds heard in the area surrounding Lake Bindu Sarovar is described here. After drinking honey, the black bees became maddened and they hummed in intoxication. Merry peacocks danced just like actors and actresses, and merry cuckoos called their mates very nicely. So the environment there is very, very auspicious, very happy, and very sweet for the heart of the living entities there. So that is the greatness of the place where the Lord and his devotee were there. It gives all auspiciousness, all benedictions. That is why all these living entities are having a very blissful time. Now, next one, we are in verse number 42-43. Lake Bindu Sarovar was adorned by flowering trees such as Kadamba, Champaka, Ashoka, Karanja, Bakula, Asana, Kunda, Mandara, Kutaj, Kutaja, and young mango trees. The air was filled with the pleasing note of Karandava ducks, plavas, swans, ospreys, waterfowl, cranes, uh, chakravakas, and chakoras. So Prabhupada is explaining that, for most of the tree, flowers, fruits, and birds mentioned here, there are no proper English synonyms which we can use to describe that. It's like a lack of words to describe the beauty of that place. And overall, he's saying, this is a very pious place, very pious living entities are there, and the aromatic flowers and the environment, so all these flowers mentioned, this Kadamba, Champaka, all these are very, very fragment giving trees and flowers, and amazing place it is. That's what is being described here. So the next one, it shows adorned with deer, boars, porcupines, gavayas, elephants, baboons, lions, monkeys, mongooses, and musk deer. So Prabhupada is talking about two animals in this purport. One is this gavayas and this musk deer. It is said, Prabhupada is saying, the gavayas, the species of cow mentioned herein, bear a bunch of hair at the end of their tails. This bunch of hair is used in temple worship to fan the deities. So that gavayas, the tail of that, the hair in the tail is used as the chamara for the deities. And sometimes it is also called as, these gavayas are sometimes called as chamaris, from which the chamaras we use, which come. And then he also talks about the musk deer, the musk deer from their navel, they produce a very beautiful scent, kasturi. And this is actually a big item for trading in those days, he says. And it is a very high-class perfume. And Prabhupada is saying, these are always in great demand for the higher classes of Hindu population, and such business still goes on in large cities and villages in India. So the musk, I don't know how many you sent and whether these musk scents we are all able to use. These are all Vedic, which has been there. I don't know how they are today, all chemicals used and all that. I'm not promoting all this, but it is there in this verse. Entering that most sacred spot with his daughter and going near the sage, the first monarch, Swayambhuva Manu, saw the sage sitting in his hermitage, having just propitiated the sacred fire by pouring oblations into it. His body shone most brilliantly. Though he had engaged in austere penance for a long time, he was not emaciated. For the Lord had cast his affectionate sidelong glance upon him, and he had also heard the nectar flowing from the moon-like words of the Lord. The sage was tall, his eyes were large, like the petals of a lotus, and he had matted locks on his head. He was clad in rags. Swayambhuva Manu approached and saw him to be somewhat soiled like an unpolished gem. So here, how the position of Kardama when Swayambhuva Manu came and had darshan of him, here is a very lustrous youth who's following strict brahmacharya. How his presence is, Prabhupada is writing, here this verse is talking about like an unpolished gem. You can realize that, because the Muni has been going through so much of austerities, and he was wearing rags, it is mentioned, right? He was wearing, a dress may not look very opulent, but he's an unpolished gem. That Manu was able to see that, this guy is not an ordinary person. That, Swayambhuva Manu is mentioned here as the first king, the topmost king, and he is coming and giving his daughter to a man who is wearing rags. So this is the thing. But Swayambhuva Manu could actually see through all that position of all his rags and all that sitting in a hermitage. But this man is such a great personality. who can actually, you will see later in this verse, how Swayam, this Kardama Muni, even though he is wearing rags and stuff, how he made an opulent life for his daughter. If that was a necessity, he was having the ability to do it. That we will see at a later stage. Uh, but at this point in time, he saw through his position that even though he's looking like this, so the Prabhupada is explaining the brahmacharya, one has to be very austere. It's not about nicely opulent, uh, 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 living like a very, very, what do you call, luxurious life. Brahmacharya is meant for austerity. And in that austerity, one gets the strength. He's saying here, actually, generally, if you see all these brahmacharis, they'll be very lean, not having a lot of, physical, because they are following an austere life. It's not that they look very handsome or whatever. Because, we understand how, when you are austere, you are not going to look very this one. But here, Kardama Muni, because he is also having this great, what do you call, the powers because of his austerity, he also looked very nice. That is mentioned here. And because he had darshan of the Lord and he had heard the Lord's words, the person who, if you get a sidelong glance of the Lord, it's mentioned that the person is completely becomes fully auspicious, fully powerful, he develops an aura around him. But here is a person who had actually had a long discussion with the Lord, and the Lord has seen him and he shed tears for him. Such a person, how great he will be looking and how his energy will be, how the environment around will be. All this is so great. It is essential that a brahmachari engaged in spiritual advancement looks very healthy and lustrous. The compassion of the sage to an unpolished gem is very appropriate. Even if a gem just taken from a mine looks unpolished, the luster of the gem cannot be stopped. Similarly, although Kardama was not properly dressed and his body was not properly cleansed, his overall appearance was gem-like. This Prabhupada writes this. Okay, we'll go to the next verse. Seeing that the monarch had come to his hermitage and was bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benedictions and received him with proper honor. So whenever a king comes to a sage, it is important for the sage etiquette that he immediately welcomes him and blesses him. He may be older than him. The king may be older than the sage. But the position of a sage is that he is higher than the king and he has to give blessings and benedictions. This is etiquette. Then, after receiving the sage's attention, the king sat down and was silent, recalling the instructions of the Lord. Kardama then spoke to the king as follows, delighting him with sweet accent. So now Kardama understands now. Therefore, the Lord has sent the right person, what he already described to me. When the king took benediction and he sat silently, Kardama started speaking and he glorifies the king. And this discussion is about that. That is where we will end actually discussing the glories of the king as described by Kardama. The tour you have undertaken, O Lord, is surely intended to protect the virtuous and kill the demons, since you embody the protecting energy of Sri Hari. So here, in a nutshell, the king is supposed to be the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king is actually to be worshipped like a Hari. Why? Because the king is carrying on the service of protecting the jivas. That is actually the maintenance is done by Hari. And he is actually an instrument in the hand of Hari, and his job is to protect the citizens of the world. That is simply like that. And when he's doing that, then he is actually to be seen as a representative of the Lord, and you pay your obeisances to the king. And that is what Kardama Muni was doing. And it is mentioned, the Lord himself descends to give protection to the Paritranaya Sadhunam, Vinashaya Chadushrutam, Dharma Samstarpanataya. The Lord is coming, and the king is also doing the same job for the Lord. That means protecting and establishing religious principle. And for that, he needs to simply travel all over the world and see how things are going. Not simply that I am king and I will live a luxurious life. No. Your job is to go physically, supervise everything, and ensure everything is in order. That is being mentioned. When necessary, you assume the part of the sun god, the moon god, Agni, the god of fire, Indra, the lord of paradise, Vayu, the wind god, Yama, the god of punishment, Dharma, the god of piety, and Varuna, the god presiding over the waters. All obeisances to you who are none other than Lord Vishnu. So, Swayambhuva Manu is not an ordinary person. To be the original king of the entire universe, it's not an ordinary thing. Everything else is under his control, including the sun, the moon, and all that. So, like, the chief minister or the prime minister, but they are empowered to carry on all functions, somehow or the other. So, that is being mentioned here. Next verse, 52 to 54. If you did not mount your victorious jeweled chariot, whose mere presence threatens culprit, if you did not produce fierce sounds by the twanging of your bow, and if you did not roam about the world like a brilliant sun, leading a huge army whose trampling feet causing the globe of the earth to tremble, then all the moral laws governing the varnas and ashramas created by the Lord himself would be broken by the rogues and rascals. So Prabhupada is saying the duty of the king is to ensure that the system of Varnashrama Dharma is actually practiced and followed everywhere in this material world. So we know this Varnashrama Dharma is a long discussion. The Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras. This system is there, and this system will take care of running of the society in a proper way. And the position of the Kshatriya is to ensure he protects the system, and the Brahmana class, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. So now both the Varna and the Ashram, then that the Ashrama is the Brahmana, the Brahmacharya, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and the sannyasa. So if you are able to actually protect this system in the society, then the society will naturally grow and be in a righteous way. And the king's duty is actually to ensure the society goes righteous way. Therefore, that principle which will ensure that righteousness is this Varnashrama Dharma. And therefore, the king's prior duty is to take care of it. And Prabhupada is describing whether we like it or not, this Varnashrama Dharma will exist in different form. In today's Kali world, just that, people say, oh, this is caste system and all that. But we have made it into caste system. It is not caste system, but we have made it into the caste system. But even if you neglect and leave out all this caste system, rightly so, the principle remains. For example, if you take, there are these engineers, there are these CEOs, there are these, the marketing fellows, there are these clerks. This is also Varnashrama, but only thing is that Varnashrama system is not connected to the Lord, and therefore it is creating chaos. The CEO is supposed to be like the Brahmana, and the marketing fellows and all of them are the Vaishyas. Then there is this, the president is like the Brahmana, the CEO is like the Kshatriya, and the marketing and the sales fellows are the Vaishyas, and the common people who are working in the clerks and various departments ensuring the day-to-day functions are happening are the Shudras. But only thing is here, it is there even in modern society, but only thing is it is not connected to the Lord, and therefore that is actually creating chaos. The system will be there, but the system when properly implemented, connected to the Lord, then it becomes a proper Varnashrama Dharma. That is being discussed here. So the next verse, 55. If you gave up all thought of the world situation, unrighteousness would flourish. For men who hanker only after money would be unopposed. Such miscreants would attack and the world would perish. So continuation of the same. Therefore, in the institution of the 4 Varna and 4 Ashrama, there are regular training principles for the different classes of men. That is just like we have today when we are trained in different spheres, software engineer, then ordinary engineer, medical practitioner, they are trained right in that area of work. And therefore you are confident going and giving your health, to that, seeking advice for your health from that practicing medical practitioner, not to a quack, right? Because they are very well trained in that area. Similarly, this Varnashrama means training.
not by caste system, but by the gunas. It says, no, guna karma vibhaga shaka. That means the varnashrama system created by me, and it is based on the guna, that means the nature of the person and the activities in which he or she is trained. So that is important. And if we follow it in the proper sense given by the scriptures in relation to how you use the system for progressing the atma, not simply the body, then it is a perfect system, and that is very important. It is clearly stated herein that unless there is the vigilance of a strong king, impious, unqualified men will claim a certain status in society, and that will make the social order perish. So this is important. If the king is not proper, following the proper Vedic system, there is every possibility or why certainly that society will be in a complete mess. So this, all the great kings in from Manu himself, the original supreme king, he followed. What about our current rulers? They need to naturally follow. If they don't, then you can't really think of a prosperous, wonderful country. This is a fact. Coming to the last verse, or in spite of all this, I ask you, O vigilant king, the purpose for which you have come here, whatever it may be, we shall carry it out without reservation. So he is then surrendering to the king, saying, no, okay, all this I have said, but you have come here for a specific purpose, and I am ready to follow the order what you are going to give me. So this is the position of all the people. How the reciprocation between a Brahmana and a Kshatriya is there. The Kshatriya is supposed to protect the Brahmanas, take instructions from them to see how to govern nicely. They have to, in that way, they have to surrender, but at the same time, the Brahmanas will have to be working to help the Kshatriyas run the society properly. So there is a nice, Prabhupada says, this reciprocal relationship is called as Bhakti Karya. That means this is also devotional life. That means how the Brahmanas cooperate with the pious ruler to ensure there is harmony in the society. See, Prabhupada is writing, I read this once. Formerly, it was customary that the sages used to go to the kings and the kings used to visit the sages in their hermitages. Each was glad to fulfill the other's purpose. This reciprocal relationship is called Bhakti Karya. There is a nice verse describing the relationship of mutual beneficial interest between the Brahmana and the Kshatriya. Kshatram Dvijitam. Kshatram means the royal order and Dvijitam means the Brahmanical order. The two were meant for mutual interest. The royal order would give protection to the Brahmanas for the cultivation of spiritual advancement in society, and the Brahmanas would give their valuable instruction to the royal order on how the state and the citizens can gradually be elevated in spiritual perfection. This is what I explained. When these two classes cooperate nicely, then the entire universe can progress properly. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the third canto, 21st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Conversation between Manu and Kardama Muni. So here I end. I'm sorry I came a little late and we extended for another 10 for 15 minutes time. If there are any questions, we can discuss. Hare Krishna.